Good evening and welcome to the first round of our Lukáš Vydra Trophy series, which is essentially what the Gold Star series was previously. A series where we tried to find the best driver of the year in several different makes of cars, different series, open wheel, 10 tops, endurance, whatever your cup of tea is. There will probably be a race in that particular series in the Lukáš Vydra Trophy, which we have renamed the series in memory of Lukáš Vydra, one of our Czech representatives. He was with us just over a year, if I remember correctly. Was very nice to work with and talk with and do business with, as one would say, where he did Nations Cups, and unfortunately he was taken from us way too soon. And in memory of Lukáš, the series is now called the Lukáš Vydra Trophy. Tonight, as you will have seen a slight picture of, if I go back there, we will be seeing the 1984 200 Meilen von Nürnberg, the DRM series. I believe this was part of. So we will see Porsche 956s, the Lancia LC2, a C-car. I believe a Lola is at least signed up for the race. We will see if that car runs. I haven't seen it on the server yet. In the Group C, and in Group B we will also see the classical BMW M1, the Porsche 930, and I believe one, if the car runs, 928S, which should be a really interesting race. And with me in the booth, also driving, as is usually the case, is Dave Miller. Good evening, Dave.
Good evening, Jonathan. Joining you tonight from our Porsche 930 in the Group B class. This should be an interesting race. The Norisring usually does throw up a exciting, but not necessarily always for the right reasons, kind of race. With the speed difference between the Group C and the Group B cars, it could be very interesting out there.
That's certainly true. If I saw correctly, my apologies, I've eaten about half an hour ago. There's about a 6 to 7 second difference between the Group C and Group B cars, so the track is only 2.3k, so that equates to quite a big difference, especially at the end of the straights, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. For a bit of reference, the 930, which is not a slow car, hits 150 miles an hour or so at the end of the longest straight, but it's very easily overhauled by the Group C cars.
And for those of us using metric and so on, 150 miles is about 185, I believe, kilometers an hour. So definitely not a slouch, but as you say, those Group C turbo prototype monsters are, just like nowadays, flying past everyone else.
Absolutely, truly one of the golden eras of sports car racing, this.
And while the drivers' briefing is still going on the server, from what I can see, let's have a quick look at the trivia question for you this evening, so you have something to ponder, because I'll probably not have time during the race to actually bring up the trivia because of the nature of the track and the pace difference between the cars. But the trivia question tonight, courtesy of Jason White once again, is who qualified on pole for the 1984 DRM round at the Norisring, which I believe is this round in real life. Was it A. Stefan Beloff, B. Jochen Maas, or C. Thierry Boutsen? And to make it very clear, I had the complete wrong idea here, but I went with my favorite, one of my favorite driver out of the three, rather than probably a more sophisticated guess, so to speak. But let's see if we can get onto the track here and have a little bit of a look at the oopsie daisy as I just try to sort. Thanks for bearing with me as I just try to sort the small bits out here, as we are watching currently Alberto Ibanez in one of the BMW M1s. And right behind him is Thiago Canola, who I believe is in the 928 if there's no wing on that Porsche. And by that I mean no, that's the 930 Porsche right behind him in the form of Thiago Canola. Both of these cars, Group B cars, capable of on the very long straights around 200. Oh, as Alberto gets a bit of a nudge there. Capable of around 200 kilometers an hour, or about 160 miles an hour on the longest straights. Around here, as been mentioned, they reach about 150 miles an hour.
Two very different concepts in those cars there, Jonathan. You've got the traditional Porsche layout in the 930, just with added turbo boost because it is the 80s. Whereas the BMW, that's basically the pro car that we would have seen in previous seasons, but running in its intended guise as a Group B car. That's got a big, naturally aspirated engine, which makes it a bit more drivable.
Certainly, but maybe not quite as quick as the Porsche down the straight itself. Right,
no, it's a little bit.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's a little bit slower down the straight, but it's a lot easier through the corners.
Certainly, with I believe it's a mid-engine layout in that one, right?
It is, yes.
So the balance, of course, would be far more centered towards the middle of the car. Let's see if we can further look through the grid here. We have Tim Hiller, I believe, making his debut here at ISO. No, sorry, he made his debut in the Australian Touring Car Championship last time out at Amaru. But this is his first entry in a long distance race.
I believe he's been driving the Modena in the Formula 1 Championship, Jonathan.
Oh, if that's the case, then my eternal apologies. Because I don't broadcast and I don't drive in that, I tend to do other things during the F1 events, so I don't follow that as closely as maybe I should. But he is driving the Porsche CK5, which is a T. Kremer built and improved 936 with a hard top instead of the open top that the 936 originally had, and some other small bits and pieces underneath to try and modernize it a little bit, so to speak. 4-speed gearbox as well, so I'd assume that is one of the trickier cars to drive here tonight.
Indeed, it's a bit of a rocket ship down the straights, but getting out of the corners can be very difficult, as it has a massive amount of turbo lag.
That's certainly true. And another car that has a lot of power, but maybe a bit tricky to drive is the Lancia LC2, as we can see here in the hands of Alberto Junior. A car that won a lot of pole positions in its heyday, but I believe only 3 outright wins in the World Endurance Championship during the 80s.
Yes, that car was famed for its fragility, But this being a sprint race for these cars, it may be in with a shout here.
It's certainly possible. It's very, very quick down the straight, but it is looking a little bit nervous, it has to be said, at the moment. See, here is one of the other one-car appearances. The Procar AG entered CK C830 in this series with a Porsche engine, same engine that is in the 956, but more of a, in relative terms, a garage car compared to the works entries. When Jason puts up an interesting point in the chat as well. According to him, the Group C cars won't be able to run at entirely full tilt and make them one tank. So the question is, do you sprint and have a splash and dash, or do you try to fuel save a little bit? That'll be interesting to watch. Let's see, currently quickest in race trim by the looks of things, but only by 76 thousandths of a second is Juha in one of the 956s. The works, the complete, I suppose one could say, works entry, the number 6 Porsche. Probably the most well-rounded car in the field, at least in the Group C field, with not quite as much power as the Lancia, but a bit easier to drive in general terms. Although, as we can see for Juha here, still a bit of a handful at times. And we can see in the background as well behind him the Jägermeister, one of the iconic liveries for endurance racing and racing in general. The orange background with the Jägermeister, and I believe that's a deer on the logo, looking back at us. And talking about iconic liveries, we have one of those in the GT Group B field as well, in the hands of Cesariusz Szlapinski. I believe it's in his hands. Yep, it is. Sorry, I couldn't see it from that far away. The Warsteiner liveried BMW M1, the golden car in the field, and presumably one of those in with a shot at winning the Group B honours in this race.
I think he's definitely going to be one to watch, Jonathan. That's a very capable car with a very capable driver in it.
For sure, but it's also, it has to be said, very nice to see that the field is very closely spaced at the moment, with I believe 1.5 seconds, so thereabout, covering the Group C field. Oh, we have Filippo as well here. Let's see if I can find him. There he is. Filippo is also in a, I believe, unless he's swapped late, he has. He was supposed to drive one of the Lolas, but that's a Porsche 956 that he's in at the moment. We are about 1.5 minutes away from the race actually getting underway altogether. This is probably the problem point that we'll have around here for the drivers running on their own. The exit of the right-left S-Kurve will catch probably a few drivers out with either the turbo kicking in at the wrong point or turning in a little bit early, hitting the inside barrier that we can see up there on the right just as the car comes around, or understeering and hitting the brick wall on the outside here, which has claimed many cars over the years. And effectively only 4 corners around this track. But let's, because I believe if Dave fires on here, he'll get one more lap if he wants to take us for a lap before the race. I forgot to do that, but probably a little bit late. Let's jump on board with Cesar Slapinski instead. He's going into turn 1 now. A very, very tight left-hand hairpin taken in first or second gear, depending on how you have it set up. A short shoot, just hitting third, I believe that is, so down to second for this right-hander. A lot of understeer, broke a little bit late there, then tried to get the car into the left and not hit either the inside barrier or the brick wall on our right. Then a bit of a longer run up to fourth, and a curved braking zone going into the final hairpin on the track. Try to get in. You can get right up next to the barriers there if you are brave, and then there's a bit of a kink coming around the final, what I suppose you could call the final corner. But race session is on. Let's try to find David Yates, who took pole position for this race. Let's see, on pole we have David Yates in one of the 956s, the John Fitzpatrick Racing entry. Second on the grid will be Alberto Equino in the Soul Lancia LC2 for Martini Racing. Third on the grid is Brun Motorsport, Pascal Mikola in the Jägermeister sponsored car. Fourth on the grid is David Saber for John Fitzpatrick Racing, number 33, also 956. Juha Bos is 5th for Rothmans Porsche, with Jason White is 6th for Porsche Crème Racing, one of the 956s. Ray Riddle 7th for Joest Racing, also in a 956, and 8th is Richard Coxon in the C-car. Jason White lines up 9th for Joest Racing in the 956, and Filippo Marazzi rounds out the top 10 for Obermeier Racing, also a 956. The final car in the Group C field is Tim Hiller for Porsche Crème Racing in the CK5. And then on pole for the Group B field is Francois Javier Boucher, a privately entered 930. With second in the Group B field being Cesar Slapinski in the BMW M1. 14th for Alberto Ibanez, also in the M1, with Dave Miller 4th in the 930. 5th for Richard Wilkes in one of the 930s, and Simon Wattman in 6th, I believe that is, in one of the M1s. 7th for Brian Yannick. 8th for Steve Parker, 9th for Jakob Fredriksson, actually last in the field, so didn't set a qualifying lap, as we are coming to the green flag drop. So we just wait for the signal to be given. And there we are, across the line, green flag is out and we are racing.
No green flag yet.
No? That's strange. Okay, so they want to do one lap on the safety car and then wait a full lap before they give the green?
Looks like it. I believe this may have happened before when we've raced here.
Suppose that's a possibility, so let's have a look at the field as they sneak into the S-Kurve, a right-hander at turn 2. And it's a beautiful field A lot of great race cars and some really nice looking liveries along the way as well. And Jakob Fredriksson, understandably so, hanging back a little bit from the Group B field, just to give himself a little bit of room, as he'll be coming in there with quite a bit of steam down the front stretch, as hopefully we'll get the green flag this time by. As we can see, everyone trying to keep the formation as well as they can. Very nicely formationed up, actually. And still no green flag. I wonder if there's possibly an issue with the track that hasn't been noticed before then.
Quite possible.
I suppose we'll give it one more try and then possibly do something about it, but again the field rolling past.
No, we'll be going for a restart. I think the admins have just called.
Okay, that's understandable considering there's a few too many laps for everyone to have done here, so we'll have a little bit of a wait. As I'd assume Richard is on the server trying to sort out some different settings.
Hey, wake up.
Oops. There he is. Yeah, presumably, well, technically, WEC and as in the FIA and IMSA actually worked together on more or less creating the GTP and the Group C regulations. So I wouldn't be surprised if one of the officials from overseas is here for this one. Okay, so what we will have instead is one extra lap added to the total race distance, with the start being given
Hey, wake up.
given as a green by me after one lap on the yellow. And Pascal Mikula had a nice take on it, that those weren't actually caused by server issue, those were memorial laps for Lukáš Vydra, and that's a very good point and way to look at it, I have to say. And I hope everyone, despite the slight trying to find my English words here, pushed back start for the race is doing well and have had a great week up until this point, and that you will all be able to enjoy this race, as we have 20 cars turning up for this one, which is very nice to see. Okay, we are just about to head into the race session. As you could hear in the background, the race session is now back on. My apologies, as we will have this view for a little bit, since I'll be giving the green. I will need to have a slightly altered view of where we are on track. So we'll probably ride on board with David Yates until everyone comes around for the green flag drop. We can hear that David is taking it very gingerly, trying to use as little fuel as possible on this formation lap.
As I think the Porsches can just about make it on a single tank of fuel, but it's very tight, and stopping to fuel any amount of fuel will cost you a lot of time with these cars.
Of course, because the fuel rate going into the car would be fairly low relative to the cars going around on track at full throttle. Okay, as we're just coming around the final corner, the grid is as I went through before, so I hope you remember or can read on the screen more or less where everyone is. As we're coming on to the start-finish straight, over the grid slots. And my apologies to everyone, that was bad on my end. For some reason the game tabbed out on me, so what I had written there I couldn't actually apply. So that's why the start was a little bit delayed. Hopefully everyone made it through the start somewhat okay. Looks like everyone has survived. As we can see, Jakob Fröksen here trying to pick his way through the Group B cars. Oh, and we have Alberto Ibanez, who's had a bit of a spin there. Looks like everyone was able to avoid him though. Jakob going onto the cobblestones to try and find a way past. Definitely not easy for him. Thankfully Alberto is back running, but in the lead we have David Yates ahead of Pascal Mikla, David Saber, Alberto Quino dropped to 4th, Bors 5th, White at 6th, Ridol 7th, White 8th, Marazzi 9th and Coxon in 10th, with Hille in 11th. And Dave Miller in the lead in the Group B honours. And now with Jakob Fröksen right behind him, so presumably Jakob will blast past him on this short straight here. If only just that turbo takes a bit of time to spool up. We can see David Yates actually opening up a little bit of a gap to Pascal Mikla. Then David Saber and now Juha Bors, so Alberto Quino definitely struggling here in the early laps. And the fastest lap of 52.4 to kick us off. And here goes Jason Whited up the inside of Alberto Quino into turn 1. Actually mounting the curb quite heavily there is Whited, but he makes his way past. I wonder if Quino is possibly having to be even more careful with the fuel usage. Now on board with Tim Hiller in the CK5. See a lot of smoke, a lot of oh dearie me, I don't think there were contact, but that was very close between Hiller and Marazzi. You can see that he is working the wheel quite hard there, trying to keep the car in a straight line. And Coxon actually gaining 3 positions in the last 2 laps here, up from 10th to 7th. With a big group of cars fighting for Group B honours. First for Schlapinski now with Miller in 2nd, and then 2 by 2. Ooh, as Richard Wilks actually hits the wall, a tyre barrier on the outside of turn 1, and now with Steve Parker right behind him. David Yates with an even bigger lead now, nearly 5 seconds at the front of the field. board with Alberto Junior once again. Behind Saber now, so I believe David Saber will have gotten by him as well. You can hear that 3-liter Ferrari engine working very well indeed, because despite it being a Lancia LC2, with both of them being owned by the Fiat Group back in the 80s, the engine is actually a Ferrari derived V8, I believe. Originally meant for the Ferrari 308 GTDI as a 2.7 liter engine, but upped a little bit in displacement and a few other neat bits and tricks done to the engine, and we could see there him going by David Saber into the S-Kurve. Very nicely done. Saber now also under pressure from Richard Coxon. And I thought he'd actually go for it there, but Saber actually almost looking up the inside of Alberto Junior instead in the last corner. And here we can see the King that we didn't get to see in the warm-up. Oh, and David Saber, I believe, missed a gear there. Very close call. And Richard actually said that that C car that he's driving is a bit of a troublesome one to drive, but he is able to make it work somewhat here. And in Group B, in the meantime, Slapinski has opened up a little bit of a gap ahead of Dave Miller in second. And Richard Wilkes now back up into third. He dropped to 5th or 6th in class earlier on. When Brian Yannick and Steve Parker almost coming to grief there in turn 1.
Very easily done. The 930 is very sketchy on the brakes into these big corners.
That's very understandable. The 930 is derived from the 911, and the 911 has always been known as a bit of a temperamentful car, so to speak, as a road car, and I couldn't think that the race car would be any different.
Especially when it's packing this much boost.
Of course, of course. Always blue flag, so the leaders are already catching up to the Group B field, starting on lap 9, maybe even lap 8, depending on how far behind. No, lap 8, late lap 8, early lap 9, the lapping start for the leading cars. And let's actually get on board with David Yates here and see how big of a speed difference there is down the straight, as he dispenses with Brian Yannick. And there were quite a big gap up to Canola, but it is already up underneath his engine as they enter the final turn. And now 2 wide ahead is Miller and Wilkes fighting for second in class, and Yates very considerably takes it a little bit easy down the straight, where you can see how much he pulls away from the 930s down the straight. Wilkes and Dave Miller, both of them really getting into it here, and both of them surviving the first turn. It looks like Dave Miller may be able to hold on to second, or not, because Wilkes had the inside line, was able to take the position. And we can see here that's Ray Riddall with a bit of problem when his 956. He's had a bit of contact with the barrier somewhere and lost his front end, so that'll make his car considerably more understeery. Let's have a ride on board with Jason Whitehead here. chasing after Juha Bors as lapping goes on as well. Canola and Miller. Oh, and Wilkes as well as Pascal dives up the inside. Oh, and that's a spin, for Juha Bors. Oh, and almost on the racing line on the exit. Coxon nearly hits the rear end. But Coxon climbs up to 4th with that because he recently got by Alberto Equino as well. Oh, and that looked like some kind of lag or something. Because that's Alberto Equino with massive damage now. And I noticed Steve Parker with a big off as well in all of that, and Steve Parker is out, unfortunately. Understandably so, that was a big hit. I wonder what Alberto Equino will do. He is forced to retire as well. Oh dear me, that's very unfortunate. That definitely looked like lag on one end or another there, with both of them skating slightly sideways and off and then into the barriers. And Jakob Fröksen now on the attack against Filippo Marazzi. As Filippo is trying to hold on to 7th position in the overall in the race. I wonder if the Group C cars may run into trouble with flat spots, because there's a lot of locking up into the final turn. Of course, there's a lot of bumps there. Someone is into the pits.
That'll be me.
Well, that's be you. Were you involved in that incident with the Steve as well, then?
Nope, I got surprised by the Seca breaking into turn 1.
Ah, that's very unfortunate. As Ray Riddle is into the pits as well to repair his car. Looks like Richard Coxon, despite the scare there, has been able to keep going. Now with Juha Bors behind him and David Saber further behind still. And then there's that fight for 7th between Marazzi and Fredriksson. Of course, both of them in the same make and kind of car, so it'll presumably be difficult for Ferguson to be able to make his way past, as Ibanez stays wide, lets the faster car onto the inside line. Very sportingly done there. As I noticed, Ray Riddle came out of the pits after his repair, and presumably a bit of a top off just to make sure he can make it until the end of the race on fuel. And Dave, unfortunately, has retired as well. Were the damage too heavy then for your crew to repair?
Yeah, with 300 seconds of repair time, it's not worth carrying on.
Oh dear. Yeah, that reminds me of we raced these cars in a DRM championship on Affect 1 a few years ago. There's a bit of a close lapping there with Canola and Yannick fighting for position and Marazzi looking up the inside at one of the airfield tracks in Germany. I can't remember the exact name of it. Mainz-Finten, I believe it's called. And I went off on lap 1, and I think I had 711 or something seconds to repair, which would equal to about 6 minutes in the pits. Sorry, that's even more. That's about 11 or 12 minutes in the pits. 11 and a half. I decided to go with it, but it became quite a tiresome race.
Well, back in Group B, there's a battle for third going on between Brian Yannick and Thiago Canola breaking into turn 1.
Yep, they were just lapped by Ray Riddle, or unlapped, I suppose would be more correct, because he's now just under a lap behind these two in his fight back. Was Yannick has a bit of a scrape along the wall, takes a bit of paint off his Porsche. As there's another quick car behind them, I noticed the blue flag. Was Thiago looking up the inside. Brian gives him the room. Brian just about holds on, and now another fast car behind him. That's Tim Hill in the CK5. Oh, good call to go to the left, I think. Wouldn't want to go between them. When Yannick holds on, although very, very loose on the braking there.
Definitely a case of the rear end trying to overtake the front there.
That's a very Porsche-esque thing to be doing. As Canola now goes up the inside in the right-hander of the S-Kurve. Looks like he's able to take the position away. It looks like he's already, with a bit of a better exit there, opened up a little bit of a gap. So almost 20 laps into this race, Ślepinski leads the Group B field, about 3.5 seconds ahead of Richard Wilkes in second, with now Thiago Canola in third, with Yannick in close pursuit in fourth. Alberto Ibanez with a nice fight back from last in the Group B field, as Jason Whited sets the fastest lap of the race at a 51.6 and is now in second position as he puts a lap on Alberto right here. So that's interesting. Looks like Whited once again in these endurance and Group C, Group B cars are really, really quick here. But David Yates still enjoying a 3-second lead as he gives a flash to Jason White, as Jason White lets him go. With Jason Whited in second, about 3 seconds behind, and Pascal Mikula in third. Let's jump on board here with Jason Whited for a lap and see how he is handling this 9.56. Oh, and a big lockup for Jason White up ahead as well. Jason White clearly showing that go by, I'll let you by, go, go, go. And Jason White obliges and flies past. And now for the Porsche of Brian Yannick. Very good, calm work there, waiting for the straight to fly past. Both of the cars, of course, being Porsches, but the power and speed difference being enormous.
Absolutely. I think David Jakes may have been held up a little bit there through the S's by the traffic. Jason White was able to claw about half a second on him that lap.
It actually looks like Jason White is being a bit more aggressive with the traffic overall here, and presumably running a bit higher boost or running it a little bit harder, because he pulled nearly a second on that start-finish straight. So
as well, carry on.
No, go ahead.
As well, being the leader and being the first car to run into the traffic, that usually is what makes them aware you're coming. So it's always easier to be the second car through, as the slower cars now know there's an angry Group C car approaching.
That's certainly very true. We can see that David Yates a little bit loose trying to get the power on, as it's Whited over the bumps in the final kink. About 1.6 seconds as they crossed the line, as Ślepinski got out of the way of David Yates there. And now, oh, he missed his braking point, I believe, ran very deep. That could mess up for him in the Group B fight with Wilkes and Canola and Yannick. I believe Alberto is a few more seconds behind them still. It looks like Yakes and Whitehead has slightly different setups on their cars. Whitehead looks very, very quick in the chicane there, turn 2 and 3, and overall in the corners. But David looks to have the art of getting the power to the road down pat much better than what Whitehead has at the moment. And as P1 and P2, here comes Schlapinski, P1 in Group B, 2 laps down at the moment. Here comes Jason White, 1 lap down to the leaders. Wilkes in second, Canola third. There was Mikola and Bors and Coxon all together. So while we wait for the lead fight to get going, Coxon looks to be closing in on the leading cars. Let's actually have a ride on board with the wing of his C car. As that's a bit of a late move, but very, very nicely getting into the final corner there. It's very impressive to see these drivers handle these turbo machines. They are very difficult to drive. They are of course easier to drive than some other cars that you can drive, as Schlapinski makes another mistake in turn 1 and loses even more time to Richard Wilkes. But essentially in these sprint races you need to run these turbo cars to the absolute limit, and the cars definitely ain't nice to drive when you're on the very limit. They prefer to be, let's say, 5-10% of the 100%, so you drive them at like 90-95% most of the time in endurance races, as Bors puts a lap on Jason White, and Jason trying to make room for Richard Coxon there. As I noticed a bit of a yellow flag. What was that for, I wonder? Seems like whatever that was for, it has subsided. And White is now right up beneath the rear wing of David Yakes for the lead in this race.
Going back to how these cars are to drive, Jonathan, it also doesn't help that they're generally ground effect cars, especially in the Group C class, which means they're very stiff, very low ground clearance, but unfortunately for them, around this track you can't really use the ground effect because they're just not going fast enough.
Indeed, and then you have all the bumps as well, messing up the limited suspension travel that is on these cars. And I believe the only... well, I may be saying too much, but I think the cars in Group C that doesn't have ground effect is the Porsche Kremer CK5 in the hands of Marazzi, and in the hands of Tim Hiller, and the C car that Coxon is driving. Those are the cars that has no ground effects, otherwise all the other Group C cars has ground effects. The Group B cars are thankfully a little bit easier to drive, but still with all that power in both the BMW and the Porsche, and of course with the ill-balanced proposition of rear engine and rear wheel drive in the Porsche, under braking they are very, very tricky to get stopped. As we can see here,
Yes.
oh
Ooh.
dearie me,
That was close. Jakes was definitely balked by Marazzi there, but
Jason White
White
was
did
as
not-
well.
wasn't
So-
quite in a position to capitalise it.
Indeed.
Spun the wheels up coming out of the corner there.
Yeah, it was in the, of all places to be balked, I think that's probably one of the best places to actually be balked. So generally speaking, it's status quo, slightly more heated tyres for Jason White, but other than that, about the same. But there we can see they lost, at least in Jason Whitehead's case, off his ultimate lap time, about 1.5 seconds with that. And now some more Group B cars, it looks like. That's Alberto Ibanez, so that shouldn't pose too much of a problem for either of these two. And a fight for third is on as well, I noticed, because Mikkola and Bors are running very close together here. Both of them in 956s. Both of them is very quick in these cars.
The boss carrying a little bit of damage on the front of his car from earlier.
Presumably a lapping or something that didn't quite go as was planned. As I think Juha Bors was trying to look up the inside on the exit there, but couldn't quite get the power down.
There's Boss down the straight using the slightly quicker factory car, but Boss comes back at him through turn 1. Correction, Mikkola comes back in turn 1, retakes third place.
Yes, of course, the Works car has a slightly more updated engine, I believe. Meaning that he's probably producing a few extra Ks an hour down the straights. Whereas he's looking up the inside on the braking. Wow! That could have turned ugly very quick there, but thankfully both of them survive to fight on. But I think the difference in the straight line isn't that extremely massive between the 956s themselves. Generally speaking, I think the difference is bigger between like the Lancia Porsche and the more garage built cars like the C-Car and the privately built cars like the CK5. Oh, and Bors again late on the brakes in the final turn now. Makes a little bit of contact as well with the rear end of Mikkola. Ooh. Yeah, I think Juha feels like Juha missed his braking zone just a little bit. It wasn't that big of a tap, but it was a little bit of contact. And Mikkola almost running a little bit wide, just about able to keep the inside protected there. Was not quite a 956 sized gap, but not far from it. Both of them getting really close to the barriers here in the S-Kurve. Oh, and Juha Bors actually hitting the outside barriers there quite considerably. And it looks like Jason Whitehead for the time being is happy to sit in second and just try to save a little bit of fuel. As I noticed, there's a fight on for first, second and third in the Group B class. Canola under attack from Richard Wilkes. Canola just took the position away from Wilkes, but he immediately retakes the position, runs very deep on the exit of the S-Kurve though. Canola does the cutback and gets back past him with two lapping cars. I believe that's Yates and Whitehead flying past them down the straight. Oh, and Wilkes with a bit of a loose moment there. And Canola letting Ray Riddall know that he can go past him down this straight. So he does. And his 956. And Ryan Yannick actually has dropped back a little bit from the rest of the Group B field, and Jason Whitehead has lost a little bit of time to David Yates as well. Mikla diving up the inside of Simon Wattman there. It looks like everyone has, to some extent at least, spread out a little bit. Ferguson doing a nice job starting from the back of the field to sitting 7th at the moment. And Tim Hille likewise making the CK5 work as well as he can around here. That's a heavier car than the others, I believe, and also of course much power, but only 4 gears, so getting into the power range is a little bit of a tricky proposition. As I can hear, I believe that's someone heading into the pits as well. Let's see if we can possibly find out who that is.
Richard Coxon.
Oh, Richard Coxon. Oh dear. Either that's for us, looks like he's already down, so is it just a splash and dash then?
Can't see any damage on the car.
This looks longer than a splash and dash though. Oh, there he goes. So that's presumably a splash and dash to make sure he can make it. He's of course also running the Porsche 935 derived engine. That is in the 956s, so a very powerful engine, but obviously drinking quite a bit of petrol along the way.
Oh, Boss and Mikla come together in turn 1 and Boss spins.
Oh dearie me,
Inside.
that's unfortunate. Let's have a look. Trying to use the power. Oh, Wilkes caught in between them down the straight.
Tim Hill is also in the pits.
Oh, that's... in terms of your Bors, I think that's just Bors trying to be on the inside line, having to try and tighten up his exit and trying to get the power down the car, just span on him. And Tim Hill, you say, in the pits as well. Well, that's very unfortunate. I wonder if that's for fuel as well. Always Jason White has had a bit of a spin out of turn 1, as Ray Vidal almost span on the entry, locking up the rears a little bit. And Bors still struggling. I think his tires are slightly overheated at the moment, so he will have to take a few laps to get the balance back in his car. As Tim Hille just exits the pits now.
Well, back at the head of the field, Jason Whitehead's closed right up with David Jakes again to within half a second.
I have to say that I honestly believe Whitehead is probably quicker, but I think he's trying to save fuel by sitting in the slipstream of David Yates 956, saving as much fuel as he possibly can to try and make it without a stop. Because I'm sure David Yates knows the exact limit of what he can do. As Whitehead looks, is he heading for the pits there?
No, he's stayed out.
Okay, that's just that's his line running right up to the pit wall. The exit there, but he closes up immensely down the braking zone. So possibly a slightly different philosophy as well in terms of the gearing that they have done. with David Yates possibly saving a bit of fuel, lifting early for the corners, while Jason Whited is trying to use slightly lower revs and save fuel that way.
Quite possible, but not all these 956s are the same. A lot of modification went on.
Oh, wow. Jason Whited with a massive moment over the bumps in the kink there. Sorry for cutting you off.
No problem. If you do get a chance, if you look carefully at the back of the two cars, you can see there's quite a big diffuser tunnel on the back of Jake's car, which isn't on Whited's. So I wonder if that's making a difference, particularly through the faster corner.
No, there isn't. You're right. That's a... So Jason Whited's car will be a slightly older 956 then, without those diffuser bits. I think they added that in for the 94, sorry, not 94, 84 season.
All of the teams made their own modifications to these cars. It was a very modular car, was the 956. There were lots of different little bits teams tried here and there just to get an extra bit of performance out of it.
That was one of the beauties with the regulations as they were, I suppose. It looks like Richard Coxon in the meantime, after his pit stop, is actually closing in slowly but surely on Jakob Ferguson ahead of him. So putting in some good laps there. Ślepinski still leads the Group B race with Canola 2.8 seconds now behind him, and Richard Willicks a further 4 seconds down the road. In 12th, 13th and 14th positions respectively overall.
Boss is into the pits.
Oh dear. I wonder if that's either for all the damage he presumably has on the car after a few notches with the notch with Pascal, and we of course saw him hit the brick wall on the exit of the S-Kurve. Or if that's for a splash, just like many others have done already, and maybe more people will have to do, as we are only a few laps now away from 20 laps to go, as Coxon climbs to 6th, Fredriksson to 5th, and Sabre up to 4th. And I wonder if Marazzi will even get by him before he gets out of the pits here.
There goes Boss. Marazzi's just coming out of the last corner now.
So Boss with about a 7-second advantage there. Ślepinski lets David Yates pass. Now Whited stuck behind him, M1 through turn 1. This will be a slight nuisance to Jason, as he wants to try and keep up with David Yates, but Ślepinski lets him go into the S-Kurve though. But that of course allows Canola to close right up to the pole. So Polish-Brazilian / American battle for lead now in the Group B class. And it should be mentioned that both classes will score full points in accordance to the point structure in the championship. I don't have any graphics for you for that, but after the race I'll try to give you an idea of how the standings will look after this event. Coxon now right behind Jakob Fredriksson for 5th and 6th. Bit of a bad kick of turbo there for Richard.
Oh, and there's trouble in turn 1. Jake's just hit the spinning Marazzi in front of him. He's managed to keep it going, but that will definitely not have been good for his blood pressure. And White has a look up the inside into the S's. Jake's just holds it around the outside and gets the cut back through the left-hander.
Won't have been good for his blood pressure, won't have been good for his car either. Not that massive big of a hit, but it will of course affect the car either way. So that's very unfortunate indeed. But he has opened up a gap once again, so this will be a very interesting last 21 laps here in this race, as Marazzi on the outside trying to leave room and backs off to let the leading pair pass, but Whited again right behind David Yates with a big lockup into turn 2. When Whited headed for the pits, I'm sure.
He may well have flat spotted the tyres with that big lockup.
Could be, so maybe a quick change of tyres and a splash of fuel. Depending on how quick the crews are, obviously. He's already down, so I don't think that's a tyre stop, that's a quick splash and dash of fuel. Oh well, relatively speaking, but as quick of a splash as is possible, as Mikola flies past down the straight. But with any kind of luck, he'll be out ahead of David Saber at least.
There's a battle for 5th as well between Coxon and Fredriksson.
Also, Fredriksson has kept up with Coxon after Coxon passed him a few laps ago here. Whited comes out right behind David Saber, so that's unfortunate for Jason. He'll have to try and make his way past there. But now Yake's caught behind one of the 930s. Can't see from this distance who it is, but Jason... No, sorry, that's not Jason, is it? That's David Saber. My apologies, I'm misidentifying the cars. So David Saber held up behind Brian Yannick there going into turn 1, and Whited closed right up behind him.
I think White will be wanting to dispatch Saber quickly. He's definitely the quicker of the two.
That's certainly the case, but As always, catching is one thing, passing is a complete other, especially when the cars are as similar as the 956s are. It looks like he now has a lot of pace down the straight and flies past before the braking zone even begins. Oh, but he's locked up, he's gone too deep. Can Saber retaliate? Doesn't look like he can. So Whited, despite a massive lockup, takes the position away, so up into third. But a full 47 seconds behind David Yates. So unless David Yates has to make a pit stop, I don't think Whited will be catching him. And Mikula, I think, will be a happy second at the moment. That should give him some good points for the Lukáš Vydra Trophy standings and championship. It looks like Coxon has been able to gap Ferguson a little bit at least. As Richard Wilkes, sorry, Thiago Canola is still keeping Cesarius within view. Obviously difficult considering the difference in the way the cars are and where you get the lappings taking place and how the car is feeling. Not sure, but I believe the fuel tank in the Porsche is in the front. So obviously that will be a problem. As a yellow flag.
Oh, Boss is out.
Oh, you have Boss. That's very unfortunate. I wonder if he missed a braking point or something then, considering where that was. Actually looks like a blown engine possibly or something like that. Ooh, dear me, it was indeed. A little bit of a too aggressive a downshift there, and the engine immediately said, well, I've had enough. And was unfortunately able to, by the sound of things, have a bit of a barbecue on the exit of the S-Kurve there. Had a good effort from him, a good bit of pace in the race, but unfortunately not to be with a
User joined your channel.
good finish there, as I believe we are now joined by...
Shaplinsky's just hit the wall in the S's.
Oh dearie me.
He's still going and he's still got the lead in Group B, but Thiago Canola is a lot closer now.
Let's ride on board with this for a moment here as Canola breaks up the outside looking for a possible move.
Left front of that BMW is looking very bent now.
Oh, it does indeed. That definitely doesn't look good. And Canola in the slipstream, looking for the outside move here.
With the turbo boost, and Shaplinsky can hold it on the brakes.
Ooh.
Yeah, they have to contend with Jason Whited as well, who's lapping them.
Welcome into the booth for Juha Boss there. But
Thank
looks
you.
like status quo is continued here. Very unfortunate exit for you, Juha. Look, by the sound of things, just a bit too early on the downshift.
Yeah, exactly. Really silly. Been watching it all the race and then happens there. Not too bad. Well, I catch Richard, but that was probably just about it.
Well, it certainly looked like you had some, if not front-running pace, at least some good pace in that 956. So very unfortunate for you, but
Well, I banked on stopping once. I'm not sure everybody else is doing that. I think most people are just running non-stop.
I don't think Yates, at least doesn't look like he'll be stopping unless he's doing a very late splash and dash at the end. I suppose it's all down to what you prefer and what you feel the car needs. That's the fight.
In my case, it was more a way of driving it. You live with a low boost pressure, so I had to use more of it, and well, as a result, use more fuel.
As the fight for the win in Group B is still going on here. With I didn't quite catch that. I think that was 33. That's Sabre, isn't it? That just went past them.
That was, yep.
And obviously these Group B cars looks pedestrian compared to the Group C monsters, but rest assured both Ślepinski and Canola is trying their darndest and doing everything they can to go as quickly as possible around here. It looks like Ślepinski, after his hit with the wall there, has found a little bit of pace and opened up just a tiny bit of a gap, and Richard Wilkes looks unable to contend with that pace from Ślepinski and Canola ahead. But it does look like that's the closest battle on track. As I noticed, Whitehead has closed in on Mikla quite a bit over the last few laps, so it will be interesting to see how that transpires. As we're back on board with Thiago here, sitting behind that BMW M1, trying to work out where can I get past that wide Bavarian vehicle. I do believe his best chance is down here at turn 1, but he needs to be a lot closer if he's going to try and outbrake that BMW.
Going to be very challenging. The BMW is a lot better on the brakes than the Porsche.
Alternatively, he needs to get a better run out of the S-Kurve and possibly break up the inside or outside at a final turn, but it looks like he can't quite make the 930 do what he wants through the S-Kurve. Just yet anyway, with about 15 laps to go.
A bit closer this time, and this may be his opportunity. You can see there the power of the turbo and the 930.
He'll have a bit of draft from Alberto's BMW as well. Ooh, not quite. Can he do the cutback though? Ślepinski parks the bus on the apex there and holds on. Nice defensive work there, no major contact, just a little bit of nudging. And Coxon right behind them now, wanting to try and find a way to lap them as well. Ślepinski with a defensive line there, this could open up for Canola down into the final turn. As Alberto gets out of the way and Coxon slips past down this back straight. And Canola now looking up the inside, looking for a possible chance as Fredriksson breaks up the inside as well. Oh, dear me, that's close.
Big lock up for Ślepinski breaking into turn 4 there.
I think it was saved by Fredriksson going up the inside of Canola, so Canola had nowhere to go, and there comes David Yates as well lapping them. It looks like he will be lapping I think he's lapped the top up to 4th now in this race.
Meanwhile, Jason Whitehead is taking him a half a second a lap off Pascal Mikula.
No, noticed he was quicker, but I didn't realize he was that much quicker. As here comes Mikola, very worried to get caught, and dives up the inside of Canola. Canola sees him and lets him fly past.
Theoretically, you should have enough of a gap because there's 14 seconds between them.
Well, Canola lost out there. Slapinski can let Mikola pass down the straight.
According to the timing, Mikola's closed right up on David Jakes.
I wouldn't be surprised if David is running to a pace here to look after the gap and save as much of the car and fuel that he can, just to make sure he has something left in case there's a last minute dash. It is a dangerous...
Yes, because Pascal's last lap was nearly 2 seconds quicker than David's.
Could also be down to traffic, of course, but I reckon...
I think there was about 20 seconds between them earlier, I think.
Yes, and David's really short shifting, whereas Pascal is putting the revs a bit higher.
So that could be an interesting development towards the end of the race here. I believe we have 10 laps to go for Slapinski, so we are at 7 laps.
Six.
Pascal is,
five
sorry,
laps to
David
go.
is on lap 63.
Yep, so I
So
definitely...
there's 6 laps to go after this one.
Oh, dear me, it's only 2 seconds now. You can see
Yes,
here
the question
Mikola
is,
right
does
behind
Pascal
him.
have to pit?
I wonder if that's what Jakes is hoping here. Of course, as you say, it's definitely short shifting, and Mikola is definitely closing in.
Big lift and coast there as well. He was off the throttle about only halfway along the straight.
I wonder if Whited pace put Jakes off and he had to use more fuel than he had calculated. So that's why he's slowed down as much as he has.
Yes, because
Definitely
Jason
possible.
Whitehead's pulling about 1,000 revs more on the straight every time. Leaders are shifting at 7,000. Whitehead's going all the way to 8.5 my times.
Oh dear.
Well, we're stuck in traffic now between Canola and Czaplinski.
Now Mikola right behind David Jakes, so let's see what happens here. Yep, David Jakes still trying to save fuel by the looks of things, and Mikola closing in up the inside.
Locking up.
Both of them
He's
by
got
the looks
him.
of things, but ooh, a bit loose on the exit though. Still
There's
side
David
by side
again.
now. Jakes late on the brakes around outside, gives Mikola a good bit of room.
Oh,
And
he takes him back.
holds the position. This is a close fought fight, 3 laps to the end. And now up the inside Mikola once again. And David gives him a bit of room. But better on the power is Jakes, but let's see what happens down the straight. Mikola looking up the inside. He is up alongside. Ooh, just about avoids contact. Very close there. And Jakes again really good on power. Now has the inside line for the first part of the S-Kurve. Let's see if Mikola can do what Jakes did a lap ago.
Oh. Pascal goes sideways, he still retains the lead.
It looked very close from the camera angle I had. And now Yannick gets flown by the leaders.
There's 3 laps to go after this one.
Oh dear, Jakes hit the
David
inside
hits the
barrier.
wall.
That will have cost Jakes a lot of time, especially by the end of the straight. And Whitehead only 6.8 seconds behind them.
And it's charging.
Yannick stays wide, trying to let Yates up the inside, and Yates has a bit of a half spin again.
I noticed as well Nicola lifted very early on the straight that lap, so I think he's critical for fuel as well.
Wonder if White will get Yates here. He's pulled 4 seconds, 3 seconds, more or less on this half a lap here. But Yates got caught up behind Brian Yannick and the problem with the wall.
Well, the gap is now 3.2 seconds between David and Jason.
When Alberto
Pascal,
Ibanez
yeah, go on.
into the pits late on here.
With all the excitement, Canola is still right behind Czaplinski.
He is indeed. We're closing in on the final lap.
Pascal's just started it, he's just going through the S's now.
Oh dear me. Then let's see if I can find my graphics here. Final lap, there we go. Up on screen as well. So looks like unless there's running out of fuel for them, looks like Pascal Mikla will take the win. Just
David
ahead
Sabers run out of fuel, he's coasted into the pits.
Oh dearie me. And Yates really under pressure from Whiter as well, but Pascal Mikla will take the win here tonight at the Norisring.
And oh, Jason takes him on the line.
Oh dear me, David Yates must have run out then.
Yeah, David ran out of fuel.
Oh dearie me. That's how close it was then. Pascal Mikla takes the win.
And Coxon and Fredriksson are right together,
Yeah,
coming down the back straight.
There we are, let's see. Now down the front straight. Oh, Slapinski out of fuel, I think. Oh, he missed a gear.
Fredriksson's taken Coxon, I believe,
Yes,
into the final
and
corner.
oh, Coxon coming back. Will he get him? Oh, yeah, Coxon on the inside.
I think Fredriksson has to
Fredriksson looks like. Oh no, Coxon drags him. Oh no, it's still Jacob. Oh,
Jacob just about 33 thousandths of a second. Oh dearie me. And then there's a bit of argy-bargy there. Also for the Group B, honest, it was really close. Thiago Canola just took it ahead of Slapinski by just under 2/10 of a second.
2/10, sorry, yes. 2/10 of a second.
And Wilkes finishes
User
third in
joined
the
your channel.
Group B class, with Yannick fourth, Alberto Ibanez in fifth, and Wattman will finish sixth. While in the big class, so to speak, Mikla took first. Whited took second, just about on the line, ahead of David Yates, who unfortunately ran out of fuel. Fredriksson fourth, just ahead of Coxon, 33 thousandths of a second there. Saber
User left
into
your
the pits
channel.
with 1 lap to go, finishes sixth. Marazzi seventh, Revidal eighth, White ninth, and Tim Hiller rounds out the Group C class in 10th. With let's just go through the full field, shall we? Canola in 11th, Slapinski 12th, Wilkes 13th, Yannick 14th, Ibanez 15th, Wattman 16th, and unfortunately our retirees from the race was Juha Bors, Dave Miller, Alberto Quino very early on, as was Steve Parker. Both of them, I believe, by the looks of things, went out with connection issues causing the contact and crash that they both had. As I just try to get everything sorted out here, as we are joined in the booth here by Pascal Mikla. Congratulations, Pascal, on your win here tonight. You must be thrilled.
I am not sure how to react to this win. It could have been cleaner, I must say, but a win's a win. I don't know what else to say, really. Simply that, yeah, I
User
guess
joined your channel.
I guess the fuel economy did the talking this time. Although I also ran out of fuel at the end.
So
I literally had like a couple of drops at the end, and it just I couldn't even make it back to the pits, so, you know. But, yeah.
Well,
You know, I saw Jason Whited and Dave Jakes just racing in front, like going half a minute ahead of me. And that's when I knew they would either have to back up, back down really, really much in order to make it to the end, or pit. And Whited pitted, and Dave, he backed off. I think at the end he was probably running with, I don't know, let me guess, half bar of boost. And so was I, but... Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that certainly was a close run race, but you did take the win, and can clearly hear that you're relieved that that's the case by the sound of things, and would have seemed that you enjoyed yourself despite running behind early on in the race, behind the leaders, of course, but you had a fight with Juha fairly early on. How did you find that one, looking at both having to look after the fuel and, of course, trying to hold on and take positions away?
You know, I must say I was looking after my fuel during that fight as well. You know, I turned the boost down at the beginning already because I had done testing and I had calculated and all that stuff how much fuel I shall burn per lap in order to make it to the finish on somewhat reasonable pace. And well, Juha behind me, he wanted that place more than anything, I think. And because I didn't want to give up that place because it's track position after all, on the start-finish straight I did turn up the boost. So that's what happened. As far as I know, we had a little collision in the first hairpin, which I don't know. I didn't see, I didn't feel anything in the wheel, but it spun him around, and that's, well, I could have gone without that as well, but I think Robin's racing. That's what my excuse for it.
Well, we saw that, and it honestly looks like there weren't any major contact. It was just one of those, him trying to stay as tight as possible and try to put the power on, and the car just wouldn't quite take it.
I don't know. I didn't feel anything. I thought my first impression was that he was on the curb, and that's why he spun around or something like that. He said I kind of squeezed him. I don't know. I need to look at the replay. Same with my last lap incident with Jake's, or 2 laps from the end, which, according to Dave himself, kind of put his nose in the wall, and if so, then I'm really sorry. It's not how I intended to win this race.
That one I didn't catch, so I don't know how that looked, but either way, congratulations on taking the win. And full points for the Lukáš Vydra Trophy Championship. The same goes for Thiago Canola, who won the Group B race after a very close fight with Schlapinski, and I'd assume you're quite happy with that, Thiago.
Very good evening, Jonathan. Yeah, I'm very, very happy. Actually, I was surprised because I didn't know the lap count, and I did my move in the exactly right moment. I don't know. I was trying to save the car in the beginning. I didn't have a bad start actually. I was just being cautious. I saw people really excited and fighting each other in the first lap, and okay, I'll back off, and just wait for the guys to fight among themselves, and then after that I'll do my race, and that's what I did. I spent like I don't know 30 laps following Cesarius and just trying to understand his pace, how was his lines, and how he was managing the tire wear, how he was dealing with traffic as well. So okay, maybe I can build a case here and try to make my move in the end.
It certainly looked like you were sitting back and having just a bit of a thought, and then when the opportunity arose a couple of times, you had a go, but couldn't quite make it. But looked like you had a perfect exit on what turned out to be the final lap, and just about was able to eke out a win there. So
Yep, I was very fortunate there. Yeah, I'm sorry for Dave. I think I saw his accident in front of me. I think Coxon tried to make a double pass, and I don't think Dave was aware he was coming from the other side, and I think they Coxon hit Dave's in the door, and Dave spun in front of me. I was trying to avoid hitting Dave as well, and it wasn't possible, so I damaged my car there as well. I don't know what happened with Dave. Yeah, I feel sorry for him.
In terms of Dave, according to what he said during the broadcast, he had 300 seconds of repairs, so he decided to park it instead of running what would have been around 4 or 5 laps off the pace.
6 laps, I would say. 6 laps down with 300 seconds repair. That's unfortunate, I must say. But, sorry Jonathan, but if I may just say something about the people who were in the slower cars. Huge thanks to everybody who actually also signaled when they would let the faster cars pass. I noticed that, especially with Thiago, okay? When the Group C cars, when we flash the headlights, it's always great to get feedback. And especially with Thiago, I noticed, at any point on the track, when we both came to an agreement, okay, this is a good place to make the pass, I flash my headlight and he flashes his headlight in return. That's amazing. So that's, huge thank you. And I think every other driver in the Group C class agrees with that.
Yeah, thank you, Pascal. It was a pretty clean race, among us there, and there were 2 races, and I think we respect each other and as much as we could. I know there were some moments I lost some time, but that's part of the race. That's part of the thing of racing in 2 classes. That's no big deal. Yeah, congratulations for you too.
Thanks. Multi-class. We should do that more often.
Well, congratulations to both of you on the win, and certainly a big props to everyone for keeping it as clean as it was in this race. I know Jason, for example, was worried about it being a bit of a banger race, but we only saw one, what I suppose we could call big accident, and that was caused by lag and some kind of internet issues. So overall, big props to everyone for keeping it clean here and putting on a great race.
Yeah, I think in that case we just proved them wrong. We can do multi-class racing on a tight track.
Certainly. Before we cap off the broadcast here, let's have a quick look again at the trivia question and the answer for that question. So the question was, who qualified on pole for the 1984 DRM round at the Norisring, being this one? Was it A, Stefan Beloff, B, Jochen Maas, or C, Thierry Bousson? Either of you 3 here in the booth still with us have any guesses on that one?
I would almost say simply for the sake of guessing, I would say Beloff.
I would say Boutsen, C.
Okay.
I'd go for Beloff. Seems to be on pole for everything else.
Fair enough. And the correct answer is actually Jochen Maas.
I knew. Oh my god.
in the Blaupunkt sponsored Auto Hi-Fi 956. I too went with Stefan Beloff when I had a guess, and yes, David, Stefan Beloff lost his life in 1985 at Spa.
I think everyone would have gone with Stefan simply because it's Stefan.
Yeah, of course. I mean, out of those 3, that he's probably the driver one of the drivers I look up to overall. So That's why I went with him when I read the question earlier.
Didn't Michael Schumacher also say something about about having looked up to Belov? I mean, that's got to be some big praise if
Of course.
if the Michael looks up to you.
Indeed, very much so. Fair enough, David. And let's also have a quick look at what's coming up here at ISO in the near future. We have next weekend on March the 8th, the Grand Prix de Monaco, round 4 of 16 of the 1991 Formula 1 Championship. And I may actually chime in and have a drive there, mainly because it is Monaco, but I'll need to have another couple of days to think about that. But Jason White will be in the booth along with Alberto Ibanez, I believe, for that one. Green light at 2000 CET, with the broadcast, I believe, being started around 30 minutes to a quarter of an hour ahead of 2000 CET. And on March 11th, the Wednesday following next weekend, we have rounds 9 and 10 of the Australian Super Touring Championship from Winton Motor Raceway. Cars are available for that one if you want an entry level to ISO racing. Everyone very helpful. Everyone helps out with setups if you let people know that you are in need of help. And generally, just some great door-handle to door-handle racing. But yeah, any final thoughts for this one? This Group B and Group C race here at the Norisring.
I think the broadcast spoke for itself. The race was amazing. I think there's not much else to say, I guess. At least from my part. It was just absolutely astonishing, stunning. 10 out of 10 would race again.
That sounds great. Tiago, any final thoughts? Or?
Yeah, I'd like to congratulate ISO for the organization of the trophy. Dedicated my victory to Lukáš, and yeah, congratulate to Cesarius and Wilkes too, who finished in second and third place.
Yes, I think, yeah, that's what I meant to say as well. Definitely dedicating my class win also to the namesake of this trophy. It's simply just, yeah, that's all. Too bad he's not here to enjoy this race himself.
Well, philosophically, I'm sure he's with us, watching, even though he's not here with us physically. And I hope he enjoyed what we were able to put together. Dave, any final thoughts for you, or?
No, I think we've covered everything.
Okie dokie, then that's all for us for this evening. Again, thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed watching what we could put together. Thanks to all the racers and participants for putting on a great show, showing both car control and good racecraft and racing. I'm sure if Lukáš would have been here, we would have had a lot of fun. And until next weekend for F1, have a great week and take care, and see you all next weekend. Good evening, everyone.